Welcome to the OCS for Developers. We're going to take a deep dive through the portal. I'm going to pretend to be a developer, so I'm going to be the color commentary and some of the explanatory stuff deeper into this presentation. We've brought Chad Chisholm here to drive, and
that went so well.
That went so well. Chad's not as good with video as he is with the code, so actually we'll leverage his strengths. And then we have Laurent for color commentary as well, and accompanying on in French. He's going to be our bilingual translator, and he's going to accompany us on the keyboard and mouse. So yeah, to kick us off, we wanted to do kind of how you get yourself provisioned all the way through using the system, some of the stuff about how you store data there, how to set up connections and that sort of thing. It should complement other things you've heard today. So thank you for coming over, and let's get ourselves started. Sign in and do these things. So this is kind of the menu.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so I don't know if this thing's on. Yeah. So some of the demos that we could get into today, and I think we've got. I think that it's going to be kind of like a slide explanation, and then we can play around in the browser. So to be clear, I'll be using a browser that I've never used on this laptop that I've never used. So this will be very
up your sleeve.
Very real. Well, there is some stuff on my sleeve. I've got a watch. So we're going to do some sign-in authentication, probably OCS Connections, which is exciting. This is not going to be the end-all, be-all of that because Janelle is doing, after lunch today, a ton on that. And we'll talk about STS Types and streams. So those are new artifacts, new kind of concepts for a lot of people. Then we'll move into the portal itself and look at the Storage Explorer. Actually, this will all be in the portal. But we'll talk about OMF Connections and the message validation, which we didn't show a whole bunch in other talks. And so this will be a nice look at that. And it's a really neat tool. The API console, which gets a lot of use from everyone. We'll talk briefly about secondary indexes because I'm learning on that as I go here. UOMs, which are a thing, and then we'll look at metadata and tags and how you can decorate your streams to make them more discoverable. Very important topic, access control, and then client libraries, which we have, and I can actually do a brief demo on writing up like a new console app that'll do some stuff. And we'll have to switch that laptop. We'll see how that goes. And then we'll talk about the hyperscale thing. That's the 2 billion properties streaming data thing that Gregg talked about on Tuesday.
So in the audience, how many people have used OSIsoft message format or read the spec? Anybody used OMF yet? Good. Got 2 or 3. Good. They don't all have white lanyards. That's good. Good. And then how many people are not using Windows or Active Directory as a sign-in mechanism? Who's reliant on some other identity provider? Okay, so sometimes. All right. Good.
Okay. And then there's ample time at the end for Q&A. This is like a almost 2-hour session, so there'll be tons of time to talk. So do you want to give an overview on OCS in general? Are you going to talk at all?
I don't think I'm going to talk at all. No, I mean, we've covered those. I mean, it's more like for recording purposes and background, but you heard about OCS, so it's like a brand new development, so it's not brand new anymore. I mean, I realize it's been like almost 6 years in the making now, but it has nothing to do with the Pi3 technology from the archive, the deployment, so it's really leveraging the capability of the cloud for scale out. And the same technology is actually used on the small edge data store as well. So that's kind of interesting. Also, the big difference is that's not something we can give to you guys. I mean, that's always maintained and managed and operated by us. We don't foresee any timeline where we would give the key to the cluster to anyone yet. But so that's really a service, and then we're going to make it highly scalable, resilient, available as much as we can. Sometimes there is bump in the road. Tony said for work rate, but we've been a long way, and we're very close to the release now, a couple of weeks, so that's super exciting. Next slide. Yeah, so you've seen this one at least twice or 3 times already. So the core of the platform at this point is really the sequential data store. We're going to get into that in more detail, of course, and mostly ingressing data into that store, either from Pi system or any OMF generating sources. So it could be your custom application. We'll talk about that. We have beta version of connectors working with OMF, the H data store, and our open source startup leveraging OMF as well. The other component we have, if you click.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, you need to do that. So we talk about the admin component. So there's some administration you can do via the customer portal. So essentially defining your authentication protocol, inviting users, adding users, assigning roles, assigning ACLs on objects within the platform, looking at logs and other things. And on the other side, we all those REST API we use in the customer portal, you can actually use them as well if you want to. So pretty much everything we show you through the UI is accessible programmatically. So that's pretty cool. And you'll see that the feel is that, I mean, they feel more modern and more flexible sometimes than the one we had on the Pi 3 side. So that's interesting as well. And so that's kind of minimalistic for now, even though we we had thought to release that earlier with even less than that. But we're working on more stuff. So, I mean, the development cycle and the cadence for releasing is very fast. So every 3 weeks we're pushing new updates, and sometime more often than that on the UI side. So we're going to see, you heard about data views this morning at the product keynote. We almost close to being beta for that. And the sharing is really in good shape on the back end, so we're going to expose that pretty soon as well through the UI. And we're working on context. We've been working on that for a year now, so we're going to be ready to support other things with that. And also been working on visualization for a year. So I mean, those things, we don't preview them now, but they shouldn't. We won't have to wait years like you did for the core platform to be available.
Okay. So we'll sort of, when a slide looks like this, we'll jump to the browser and try to play with the system a little bit. Feel free to reach out and ask questions during this stuff, I suppose. Unless it becomes a problem, then I'm going to stop you. So yeah, feel free to interrupt me, but don't interrupt someone who's in the process of interrupting me. That's just rude.
What?
No. All right, so identity provider. So I touched on this a bit earlier when I was on stage. So we're going to pull up a browser here, talk about identity provider. So a lot of what questions you have about cloud services can be answered by opening a browser and accepting cookies because of Europe.
Cookies.
And just on the cloud services page here, so cloud.osisoft.com, there's lots of things here around the documentation, quick launch. You can jump right into code samples or take a look at the service blog and see what I get to do on Fridays. I write stuff for that.
And that's kind of free. That's a public-facing portal, so everybody can have access to that. Documentation, code samples, not in the context of your account. The service blog, all of that is available before you sign in.
Yeah, so this is all available now for you to have a look at, and frankly, it's been there for a while. I don't know why you haven't looked yet. And there's a link here to request to join the preview, so that'll actually just send an email to Laurent with your information, and he may or may not get back to you. There's a little hamburger over here with more things. So if I sign in, though, when your account's provisioned, you need to choose an alias. So for our demo purposes, we have an alias called OSIsoft Events. And again, we saw this earlier. You're given a chance. This particular tenant has kind of like the doors are wide open. I can use any identity provider to log in. But some companies choose only one or two of those. That's kind of up to you to choose which identity providers you'd like to lock down.
AOL.
So AOL is not supported. So there is we do have flexibility here to add things. So if you don't see the identity provider that you like, please let us know. I'm not sure of what other examples there are.
Maybe Okta or something else.
Facebook, Yahoo.
Yeah, LinkedIn. These are all actual possibilities, right? Yeah. But we're just looking for feedback on how to prioritize what the next thing to add people want to log in with. This is the easiest one for me.
And at provisioning, we'll ask you for one, and then you can add more if you want. And
yeah.
So you can have a single account with a mixed set of identity providers to help authenticate people that are external to your organization.
Let's see. They made me reset my password recently because I found this USB key in the parking lot and put it into a bunch of computers.
My computer runs a little slower, but my browser history is really weird. Oh, that's my password, too.
I got my Duo.
Yeah, I got my Duo. Yeah. So multi-factor authentication is a good thing. I'm getting used to it. There we go. All right, so I'm in, and we can actually see here on the landing page is actually that service blog. We talked about it. I'll just show you. So there's a whole bunch of things. So whenever we push updates, we try to write something about them. So this is things like, hey, now you can search for streams by metadata, which actually we'll get into a little bit. A new version of the .NET library is released. When did that happen? Last week. So we were working last week on this stuff. New stuff for PyOCS. So some of you guys in the room here have been in the preview for a little while. Is anyone actually reading these or noticing these blog posts?
Yeah, I noticed that they weren't happening. Now they are.
Now they are happening, yeah.
But it's good. I'm glad because it's like after an update, you're kind of like going in the documentation, and seeing what's like, oh, what's changed.
Hunting around.
Look at all this stuff. Holy crap.
We had to get our connection to blogger.com back up and running, get it back in.
So there are software updates, but also if there's a downtime plan or something, an outage or something, that should be in the blog as well. So of course, if the whole thing is down, we're going to try to put it on PySquare or somebody else. But usually it could be just a service being down or something, going through a bumpy upgrade, we'll let you know as well.
So does anybody remember what we were supposed to be talking about in this demo? Let's see.
You got signed in.
I got signed in. Check. Where were we in there? Sign in with customer. Oh yeah, my users management. Yeah. So we talked about the users. Oh yeah. So if we can actually come in here, we can actually see some details. So I've got my account name. It was provisioned back in February, and what are the choices of my identity provider? And this is the one that it is. And our company logo, which is a
Acorn.
an acorn. Does anybody know why? I don't know.
I like that.
Because you liked it?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
It was the first in the list of the clip art. Started with A.
And then I've got my own profile, right? So this is me. That's my email address. Let's see. There's the editor theme, which I think actually just affects the OMF editor. Anyway, developers get cute. And then all the roles I have, and we'll get into roles a little bit. We can take a look at the users management. So identity provider stuff, which is how we got on this, is directly related to my users. So we do have some people. Andrew Vendor is an example of a Google user that we've highlighted before. And Andrew only has one role here, the equipment vendor role. What that allows us to do is kind of lock him out of a whole bunch of streams, but then he does have access to a few streams. So when he logs in, he kind of sees the portal in a different way.
So Chad, what are the default roles that you have in OCS when you start?
By default, actually, that's an interesting question, and it's written up in the documents that's surfaced on the side of the bar here. So by default, when your account is created, there are.
Let's hide a user and then we'll see the
Let's
option.
see. Well, yeah. Okay, we can add a user. Who wants to be invited? We can invite Michael Saucy is on this list.
Saucy is already there.
Yeah, that's crazy. We can invite Randy Powers.
Yeah.
You guys can email me if you want. So we can invite Randy through Gmail, and we can choose different roles to give Randy for this particular user. And this will dictate the kind of things that Randy can do. If Randy is an account administrator, then Randy can kind of do everything. Randy can create users, invite other people, create clients, and change roles on things, and kind of go nuts. It's probably a bad idea. There are other built-in users that all sort of start with the word account, like contributor, data steward, and viewer. Member is sort of a baseline you can log in. So you're kind of implicitly giving that when you invite someone. Those roles are included when your account is created. They are built in. You can't delete them. They, in general, don't have any sort of, except for administrator, don't have any sort of like hard-coded, implicit permissions associated with them. But in the future, we may use those for things like a data steward is allowed to share data outside your organization, things like that. So watch this space for more. But like you can create your own roles, which is super powerful. So like I created equipment vendor the other day. We can create a new one. I never invited Randy. That was dumb. Anyway, so I can create a whole new role here. So maybe this is a someone like a CEO one, right? So this is the CEO role, and I can actually put like we get to put emojis in there, right? So this is like the CEO that I love. CEO. Yeah. Okay. So now we've got this one, and then I can go in and we can give Michael that role. Right. So
There it is. Show the love.
Are you the CEO of Transpera?
For today.
Yes. Love that. All right, cool. Yeah, so that's our role system. So, and actually, is that all we wanted to talk about on the thing?
So what can that role do now that you've given him that?
Yeah,
That's at the end.
That's at the end. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
so that is all authentication,
Yes.
which can not to be confused with authorization. So maybe you should call authentication identity, like proving who you are. So that's that side of it. Authorization, I believe, I've got the slides over here. I believe we get into later with locking down streams and things like that. And this is kind of the same thing, right? So what I didn't cover there was you can create client credentials, which are just like users, except they're not backed by a user. They're backed by a server app, like you see on the bottom right down there. So a server app would start up, and there's nobody monitoring it to type in their password, right? So a server app would pull a secret out of maybe Credential Manager or some sort of secure store and pass that along to get a token to make all of its requests. So that kind of functionality is there and in use by PyOCS and also by OMF Connections. And in your own applications, you can use client credentials to connect to the service.
So that means like devices and things like that could use that?
Yeah, so devices as well as large headless applications. And when you say devices, I tend to think of little things that are sending, but yeah, anything without a human interacting with it.
A slurry pump.
A slurry pump, perhaps. My coffee machine
Yeah, coffee machine.
at home has a client credential on it and sends data.
Yeah. It's hard to type in.
Yeah, the keyboard on my coffee machine is terrible. So, and then the number of identity providers, the ... implies that we can support more later.
You want to show the different client before we get into part 2 OCS?
You want to talk a different?
Just show them.
So as an example of the clients you can create here. So there's a bunch here that are generated by PyOCS, so they're a little ugly looking, and you probably shouldn't delete them because there's probably a PyOCS install somewhere that's using that to connect. But I can create one, like I created one earlier to, believe it or not, practice this. And so you can give it different roles, right? And this is warning you that credentials for clients are cached on the server, so editing their roles sometimes takes an hour for it to propagate the system. I've never seen that there before.
Maybe it's true. Do these expire?
Oh, we have different kinds. Yeah, so I can set the expiration on clients. That's a good question. I can set the expiration on clients here. So for each client, you're kind of defining an identity, like a machine identity. And I can generate a new secret, and I can, what that gives me the ability to do is to roll your secrets. So your applications that are running on your on-premises should periodically roll their secrets just for security best practices. And so if you have two secrets, you can kind of roll them like flop, 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 if that makes sense. And you could pick an expiration date for when this particular stops working, right? So this particular secret stops working. And if I create this now, it's on chat demo, right? So delete this after the talk.
Well, it's going to be May.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, why would I do that? Why can't I just delete it today? The talk ends at 12:15, right? Here we go. And so then there's the client secret. So this is actually what you get passed along. So I should copy this because once I close this window, I'm never going to be able to see that again. And so there's these things. These are cool sticky notes. So you just put it there. You're good.
Write it down quickly.
Yeah. So I've got that. That'll teach them. So now I've got my two secrets. So this one I created, I think, yesterday, and it expires in June of 2019. And I can't get back to this, right? So I can update it. I can change the description and maybe change that, but I can't actually get back to the secret. And I can delete it. So that's how you go and remove these things. So I would remove that one, and then that secret now stopped working. So the demo that I had on this laptop doesn't work anymore as of just now.
Can I do that via an API, Chad?
You can do that via an API, yes. There's APIs on this whole thing. And you guys, a lot of you are developers, so you may have an F12 key on your keyboard.
Is that what that does?
And yeah, and so you can actually, let me just create another one so that I can delete it and show you deleting it. You go to my network. Do people do this on stage? Like
Yeah,
actually?
yeah,
Okay.
typically. I was going to do that at the keynote.
Okay.
But they gave me PowerPoint.
So I
which
created a
doesn't
new one
have
here,
my
right?
12.
So this is my I'm making fetch happen.
Ooh, stop making that
Yeah.
happen.
So this is, I mean, it's all pretty simple stuff. I'm just getting all my secrets. If I actually delete that one, then I'll be able to see my delete. Where's my stupid delete call? There it is. So I'm deleting that secret out of there, right? So this is all RESTful API. And a lot of times, the API console is really fun and cool and all, but a lot of times, if you F12 and mess around with the portal, you can figure out how things work, which is good. Native applications aren't as fun like that, but web applications are.
So a scenario there is like if you want to go roll those secrets or you want to do something in a kind of an automated way, the reason they have an API there, if you have a fleet of, say, applications or devices, you can actually hopefully mass manage some of these things and script it to make your life slightly easier or slightly more devastating if you hit the wrong key. But so you can actually create a well-curated rollout of OMF apps or whatever.
It's a sharp knife.
It is. It's a very sharp knife. You can lock yourself out, too, so don't do that.
Another nice thing is connection. We do give you some connection quick start here. So you click the eyeball. I apologize for the sizing. This laptop doesn't have very good resolution. This is my New Year's resolution. That's a bad joke.
That's it.
Sorry.
1080p, is that your resolution?
Apologize
Mine's
for that.
4K.
Yeah, it's a good choice. Anyway, so when you create it, you get this nice thing. So in case you don't know what your account ID is, yeah, who knows their GUID, right?
I make up a little song.
Your client ID, and this is that secret, which we don't show you, so luckily we have it here. Although I think I deleted and created a new one, so there's that one.
You're going to remember that.
We got a quick start here. So this actually can be copy and pasted directly into VS Code or Visual Studio if they allow you to install that kind of thing. And connected really quickly, and it actually works. You just need to remember to replace this part with that thing I showed you.
Why is it shouting at me?
Or if you have a Mac, you can use this because it's JavaScript. If you're a front end person, and it's the same code but in that language and Python. And if you're at a place of employment that's terrible, you can use Java even.
Java?
And I'm relatively sure that these samples work because we had an intern install Eclipse and try it.
It took all summer, though, right? Well, they said it did.
You want to talk about the different client types?
Client briefly? Well, yeah, one's for web, one's for...
Yeah. There are 3 different client types, and I'm unfortunately not the... We have Neville here, though.
We have Neville.
We have a Neville
We have a
here
guest
who maybe
speaker.
can explain it. Client credentials I'm very familiar with. We've had them a long time. Implicit credentials, I believe, are passed through our user credentials that when they log in interactively. I don't see a Neville.
No, Neville's back there. I can get up and get my steps in.
Basically,
teach
it
them to
depends
come
on the
and talk.
type of application you're building. If you're building a web application and JavaScript application, you'd use an implicit client. If you're building a rich server-side web application which can save a secret, you'd use the hybrid client. If you're building a headless application, you use the client credentials flow. So they're just different flows, security flows, that you choose depending on the type of application you build. So the whole goal is to let you build a full spectrum of client applications. We don't want to restrict you in what you do.
So if you're building a spa, like an Angular app, you need to create an implicit client.
Oh, spas.
I see.
like spas.
So there's all kind of stuff here. I apologize for my ignorance on this. This stuff is being developed under my feet. While we're here doing this meeting, they're writing this stuff.
We wrap Neville in bubble wrap because he's the only one who can explain that.
So I noticed there was a core setting there, it looked like.
Mhm.
So you would probably you'd have to configure that with whatever your endpoint is going to be querying it.
In the core setting in the implicit one, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's always the one that changes.
Yes. Yes, sir.
You're not going to change anything before 2:30, are you?
2:30? It depends.
No.
Okay, thanks.
I'm gonna close.
Is that UTC?
Don't
UTC?
worry. In 64 minutes, I'll close the browser and not save anything. So
Just until then.
I've had my fingers crossed under the table the whole time. We do have a lot of inline help throughout the browser, which helps me whenever I'm in front of a microphone to explain things. And it should help you, and it's very context aware of where you are within the context of the browser. Anything else about clients?
I don't think about clients. I was looking down here, and you got some things like email and alerts and that sort of stuff in the portal.
Yeah. So there are things down here that are easy to ignore. But there's the cookie bar, or the cookie setting if you live in Europe and you want to change your mind about that. The browser support stuff. Terms of service, privacy policy. There is an email support button, which we encourage you to use. Always reach out to us. And probably the most important thing right now for us at this stage of development is the feedback. So we have user voice integration here, and basically we'll load up feedback.osisoft.com, which is it's a system of record for enhancement requests and feedback like that. So as a wise guy once said, if it's not in feedback.osisoft.com, it doesn't happen. So I recommend you guys take a look at this, and that's why we hid it in such a small button on the bottom right.
That's why it's so small.
Yeah. And there's also a record of notifications that happened while you're messing with it. So it's just things secrets are added and stuff like that. And I don't know the slide deck to know well enough whether we get to logs or not, but all this activity should be logged in here. Like I can see that somebody's messing around with data views right now in my account. This is not rendering well for my. Hopefully that's not. It might be DirNetSoft, right? It's going on now.
That's
Anyway.
in development in the namespace.
Yeah. So there is preview stuff going on. Cool. Any other? So we'll go back to the slide and move to the next thing. So PI to OCS. I could take you through.
Do we talk about namespaces in this?
I think there is a.
Yeah, we do later with the
Later.
stream and type.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get it. So the connections is all about getting data into your OCS. There's two types of connections, right? I talked a bit about this morning, just very quickly. But PI system connections are the PI to OCS. That's what those are called. And then there's OMF connections. These PIs, we have two different PI connections coming in. One of them from the Philly office and one of them from our headquarters. When you're creating a new one, say we wanted to maybe instrument up the Scottsdale office, right? So we don't have a PI server there, but maybe we should. Facilities stuff from the. There's a cactus, right? Cactus.
Yeah.
We're gonna test that out and see if that works. So now I've got that. So I created basically just an endpoint that can catch that data. It's kind of what you did there. I think different people will call it different things, but you've created a connection. You haven't actually created the transfer and all that stuff. The next step would be to download this install kit by clicking this and running it on your machine. When you run that, start that kit up, that will prompt you to log into OCS. And then it will go and find that Scottsdale office PI that you might be able to see back here. And it'll create more things at that point and ask you, where's your PI server? How do I log into your PI server? Janelle's going to go through and show that happening at 3:30. She installs that live. I don't want to install that on this laptop because I don't know if Chuck would appreciate that.
But he might have a PI server on there.
There is no PI server.
Oh, there's no PI server?
There might be.
It's PI 2.
It is Chuck. Yeah. But yeah, so that install kit. And then at that point, we can jump back to one of the existing ones. So we pull the turkey out of the pre-cooked turkey out of the oven. At that point,
Are you going to talk about certs
certificate. In what sense?
in that sense? In the connection, or does it support?
It uses client credentials that we talked about. That gets generated when you create that endpoint.
Okay.
It'll generate a client credential, and then
That's all encrypted.
Yeah, totally. And it pulls down the information. It copies it to a sticky note on the agent. It puts it in Credential Manager, in Windows Credential Manager, so that's encrypted there. And then it pulls it up and uses that to connect and send data.
So even when you're establishing that,
When you're interactively using the install kit,
no. But when the kit makes the call to make the connection to find
yeah.
OCS,
Yes.
that's encrypted.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's no plain text or unencrypted connection to OCS. It is all HTTPS. Yeah. It is current year.
And it's all packaged together when you download that. It helps you get connected super fast, right? So
Yeah, I mean,
you
it's
can
a
download it later and redo it.
Yes, and you'll need to download it later because it gets updated. So this one's like running like 1.58. It'd be kind of interesting to see what version this one is.
69.
And this one's running 1.69. So in Philly, they're updating their agent more often. So as notifications go out about updates to the on-premises agent goes, at this time, you would need to manually update those if for reasons. I hope to soon have those things auto-updating. But anyway, so then at that point, you'll need to create a data transfer, which involves, which I can't do until I install the agent. But here, this one exists already, and they are, the query defined in this one has, we have zoom it? Nope.
Use Control Plus.
Anyway, control zoom.
There you go.
That looks terrible. Okay, the query that's defined here, and it kind of ruined my day. Look at that. Is just a star or dot dot dot. So I'll go look at this one. It's star for that. So you can search for points by their name or by a point source. Janelle's been, the TPM for the PIDO OCS group has been kind of putting feelers out there on how complex these queries need to be. But as it stands for the first release, it's you can search by name or by source, and then all the points that match that are pulled down and synced. So for this one, it's 18,000 points, and the other one, it's close to 20,000. I think it's a total of 38,000 points between the two sites. And then all that stuff starts streaming in.
Yeah, you pick a start date, and then gives you the currently archived values.
Yeah, so it'll backfill data.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Anything else on PIDO OCS? I mentioned I could show you some of the. Well, we'll get into it. We'll take a look at some of the data that actually gets in there in a. What do you want to put your face? My face in there.
Put your face over there. Or your password.
Okay, let me go back to the slides. Take a look what's next. So Janelle showed this slide earlier, so I'm not going to talk about it. Okay, yeah. So now we're going to go back into the portal and take a look at different STS types and streams. So these are the building blocks of a data store in OCS. You can always do this stuff with the API console if you like typing. So you can do cool things like I want to go look at my staging namespace. So a namespace is like a database, right? I want to go look at all my types or my bulk. Favorited it for some reason. Okay, and so this is JSON, and JSON's super fun to look at. But we can also go into there's a table to do it.
And so you notice in there, PIDO OCS has created some kind of canonical PI types, and that's to help make sure that we have consistent point types or stream types for everything in OCS when it comes from a PI system.
So this probably should look familiar, right? So this timestamp and value. And then there's a questionable flag, a substituted flag, annotated flag. You guys all know this stuff, right? And then the system state code and the digital state name. These are created by PIDO OCS automatically. And so these are used to model the PI points. These other ones that are down here are created by our OMF application. So these are much more, three of them are much more, have a lot more features on them or more properties on them. So this is the one we saw on stage this morning when things were working. And there's 10 measurements that come in here all at the same time. And they're all singles, which is a cool choice. I guess it's
that's
small.
interesting.
Single 16-bit, is that what that is?
They haven't swiped right on anything.
And this one's simpler, actually. So this is just a time and a temperature. And you can see this is the key. Laurent alerted me that we actually have a slide that kind of shows some of this stuff off.
So one of the important things you're choosing there is if the device is going to measure a bunch of measurements all at once, then you want to keep it at the same index. So you can send all that data over at once. If it's multiple measurements at different times or different indices, you might make multiple types in order to send that data there.
Exactly what he said. Yeah, you got a slide for that.
Yeah, so some of the differences here, like I said, we've got a complex type that has maybe a lot of different data that's measured from this particular object, or something more simple, like you've got latitude being measured at a timestamp and longitude measured at a timestamp. I would venture that you should probably combine those into a complex type that has latitude and longitude at the same timestamp, probably as well as heading, because those things typically will come off the same physical sensor. And so separating them and then gluing them back together on the client is difficult. So,
and some of these measurements, like on a device like this or something like that, there may be some cadence to the timestamp that's far more rapid measurements for like vibration or something, and other things like temperature may move at a different cadence. So you wouldn't want to measure them all at the same time because temperature's not going to change, or you're not going to use them at the same for the same purpose. And you notice over there, he's put keys next to timestamp and step count, because those things might be interesting to index, so you can retrieve values about those things for different querying purposes, data science or data modeling or whatever.
So some other examples of simple types, if you're measuring depth at a timestamp or pressure, speed, that kind of thing. Down at the bottom, we've got some complex ones that are interesting, like indexing on depth with timestamp as well as in that key, and then you're kind of measuring the pressure and speed. We've got a quality information there, so this does give you the freedom to construct a more rich quality system, or even possibly track some editing or something like that if you want to put some like a nullable date time in there, if you want to try to measure or keep track of when things changed, stuff like that. The middle one is the only non-time series data that I've got an example for, and that's indexing things by a lot number. So maybe you're just recording the date that a batch happened, but the real thing that you query on a lot is the lot number, and so you want to bring in sequencing it like that. And then, yeah. So if we take a look at the actual data on these things, so I've got 1 billion of these streams, right? And again, context-sensitive help. So these things aren't very well named, which is unfortunate, but I can have a look at the managed data. So again, this is a pretty rudimentary trending system I've got here. It's good enough to kind of verify that your data is there. This is the last value that we received for this one. It's a 0, which doesn't bode well for looking at its actual value. Sometimes these things it's hard to find one I know has meaningful, like the CO2 data is kind of interesting. Did I have a... I was going to see if I had one that I knew had
Humidity and temperature
the VAVCO stuff. Say that again, Michael?
Humidity and temperature both look good.
Thanks, buddy.
Sure.
So this one's in a calc failed state, which is kind of interesting. So if I want to look at like the last 100 readings on it, so I can actually change to, we've only got system state code. Ugh. Oh well. This resolution's not doing me any favors today. I can do a search for some of those dynamic ones that these are not from Pi.
Staging.
No.
Am I in the right?
Yes.
There we go. So these are my fidgets ones. So that's those little boards. I have a look at the data. So this is like kind of hard to render in the table because there's so many measurements. But if I go and look at the last set of measurements on this thing, oof. Oh. Yeah, so my trend here, I've got temperature over time, which is kind of a common thing to do. I can actually change it out here and have a look at the humidity. Or I can have a look at temperature versus humidity, which is totally cool, and go that way with it. Humidity versus temperature. These angular speeds, unfortunately, these are all 0.
That's our earthquake detector, I think.
Oh, that one moved. Yeah, so this one is moving. That's cool. Oh, but it's associated with temperature. Is it moving with time? Oh, it kind of does.
Well, if it's moving with temperature, that's also interesting.
Yeah.
Building is contracting.
And then sound level. So that's super valuable there. Sound and light. There we go.
So, yeah, good. Let's see, clear.
If you were curious what I do all day.
Data, boom.
This is most of it. So I asked for a trend to be put into this corner just so we could do exactly this moment. And you know what?
It worked.
Worth it.
Worth
Yeah,
it. Totally worth it.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so these complex types really give you a lot of flexibility to store some of these correlated data, or not correlated, apparently, is another option for this stuff.
Yeah, the R squared on that's kind of funky.
Yeah. So, access control, there we go. So we talked about our vendor, and we can look at Michael and lock him out of stuff too. It's a role-based access control system. I'll go in a little bit weird order here, but this is the access control for this particular stream, and it's one of 38,000 streams. So there's no implicit. Account administrator has the ability to do everything: reading this stream, write to the stream, delete the stream, or manage permissions, which means allowed to change what you see here. I'm probably an admin because I'm super important. But the contributor is allowed to read and write, but not delete the stream or manage the permissions. And the other ones that don't have anything allowed, members are allowed to read the stream. So that's the kind of the reason that anybody can log in, can do it. So if I remove this from the stream, then Michael probably couldn't get into it. If I wanted to override Mr. Saucier's access to this completely, I could start putting some denies in here, and that would override everything.
Whoa. That's a hard no.
Yeah.
That'll make for fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, I'll close the browser without saving my. We'll just pull the Ethernet cable right before your talk. So that's how you configure that. The same thing is true for types, right? So this is my individual type. The same thing is true for all types. So you can go in and say, hey, what's the default permissions for any new types that are created, and you can set those. And again, we could lock Michael out of any new types that are created. This is very, if you've ever used Windows, or if you've ever used AF, or in some instances, Pi has similar patterns to this role-based access control. There are different names for the artifacts, like maybe they're called groups or identities or something like that. But that's the same pattern, so hopefully it's comfortable. And the namespace itself has those same permissions as well. So there's the same patterns of access control kind of folded all over the place. So each of the individual namespaces has their own permissions list. I can tell who owns it, so Laurent's the one who created this. Actually, did you create them all? Let's see who created all these.
I did.
Yeah, you created all these.
Who's powerful?
He's got account permissions.
Yeah.
So what would we use a namespace for, Chad?
Namespace is a container to put types and streams and data views and everything in.
Oh, that's exciting.
There's very little that doesn't live in a namespace. When I create a namespace, I can choose a name for it. I can choose a description for it. I can also choose the region, except as long as the region I want is West US.
Yeah. Choose that.
So coming soon will be an option to put your data all up in Europe. Everything will still work the same, but it'll come across the pond. Or if maybe your company or your government has rules about where to put the data, we're looking for that kind of input and where we should host data. Right now we're hosting at West US. But it'll be in your hands to choose which region of the ones supported. Currently, with the first launch, it'll just be the one.
So when you log in, you only need one OCS account. And then if you have Pi systems that you want to put in West US, then you make a namespace that sends the data there. You can send multiple Pi systems worth of data there. If you have some in EMEA or some other region that we support, you make a namespace and you can send that data over there. Then you can use that namespace authorization to lock people in or out of the different namespaces. So that's one way to think of dividing up your account. But it's still the same login. You still go and you log into OCS, but then what you see after that depends on all this authorization that we just showed. So you could say, oh, everyone gets their data from EMEA. Okay, that's by design. So we're trying to figure out where we expand next with OCS, but then it will just be the same account that you're always logged into.
Yeah, so the guideline is like, do not proliferate namespace. They're not meant to be isolating the data. So either it's geolocation or it's just like environment for development versus production or quality. But I mean, they're highly scalable. The big demo we did was one single namespace. So don't create like hundreds or dozens of namespace. I mean, a couple of them should be enough to satisfy everything.
Got a question in the front?
Can you use these namespaces that are geographically different, listed differently for the disaster recovery scenarios, for example?
Not really. So they're not really talking to each other. We're not replicating across.
Well, it's kind of by design. So if you have a GDPR regulation, you don't want that data to be sent over somewhere else. There's nothing that could stop you from writing, say, an application having 2 namespaces or something to go do that, but you'd have to have 2 regions that were you would have a namespace that 2 namespaces, say in EMEA or something, 2 different deployments maybe. You could do that, but then that's application work. Disaster recovery.
Yeah, so
Oh, we do that. Yeah, we do that. Yes.
Yes, this is a hosted system, right? So we are hosting this and operating this. There's multiple copies of the data that we maintain, and it's primaries and secondaries throughout all the processors.
So that's already built in. The
Yeah.
entire solution.
Yeah, that is.
So how would you, because I noticed you can assign roles to namespaces, and I mean, I guess I'm a little confused how, because it seems like a namespace you would create types and streams and then write data to it. So if you gave it a role like read only, would you first like create everything and then change it to read only, or how does that work? I mean, I guess I don't understand what the roles on top of namespaces, what that's for.
It's
So-
just like convenient default for putting stuff first instead of having to change the security afterwards. So, I mean, it's just because we can do it. It's not probably necessarily always useful, but
I think it's very useful. Just if you think of a namespace as a database,
Yep.
and then SQL has all those different ways that you can let people have access to or not. It's kind of the same pattern.
The namespace itself has a set of access control on it, and that does 2 things. One, it defines who's allowed to see it. Even within your organization, you may lock out certain groups from actually accessing any of that stuff for lots of good reasons. And 2, you can define who's allowed to create new types and new streams on that. And then the third thing is when those new objects are created, they inherit, they get a copy of that same access. So that is now the default access, those access rules for those new objects. So you have the ability to customize that, change that. We've tried to create thoughtful defaults that make sense out of the box.
And we've, for the example here, we've shown development, production, and staging. Well, actually, just invert those last 2. Development, staging, production. That might imply that the same types and streams might be available on each one, but that's not guaranteed. Like that's up to the person using the types and streams to put whatever ones that are in there. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those types are the same, but except if it comes from Pi to OCS, we would keep those the same. So wherever you put those, they will show up and be the same, hopefully. Depends on the upgrade.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as we upgrade, we add more features to it and that sort of thing. We might have to adjust that.
Okay. There's nothing else on namespaces, types, and streams. We can go into OMF. I think the next thing on PowerPoint was so we just did that, right? The STS, the Storage Explorer. We looked at type designer, stream creation, access control, data retrieval. So the next one would be OMF Connections. So I'm getting used to this slide order here. The next slide's got a little graphic explaining OMF Connections. But after we look at that, we'll go and look at creating a new connection, generating a client ID and secret for that. So we'll use our sticky notes again. And then the OMF message validation, which is pretty cool, and which is inside the OMF Explorer. So this is kind of a drawer. So if you're going to put data into OCS, you've got 3 options. One, Pi to OCS. You've probably seen that 100 or so times in the last 3 days. And if not, go to Janelle's talk at 3:30. And the other way is just direct API calls. So you can always just post data to a stream directly. That's pretty straightforward. And then the third one would be through OMF Connections or OMF Ingress, depending on how long you've been playing with the system. So when you create a connection, there's a couple parts to it. The first is the client ID and secret. That's kind of those, and that needs to be put into your application and then used whenever it connects. That data is routed up through a topic and then glued into a subscriber. I think some of this stuff is actually abstracted away in the UI, and I should speak carefully because we have some developers in the room that work on this. Unlike me, who just has a tacit understanding of some of it works. So we don't have any OMF in there. We've got, I believe, some in our development one. This is our EDS OMF. So you've heard of EDS, Edge Data Store. It's got an automatic egress system. You can kind of define which of the streams you want to push out There's a roadmap there for having that stuff go automatically to Pi or automatically to OCS. So this was coming from OCS. And so when we talked about topics, I think that this is what the topic is on my data source. And we talked about subscriptions. This one's going to 2 different namespaces. In general, there's no reason to duplicate your data among the namespaces. We've got a staging and development pattern going here because preparing for these talks this week, there's lots of things you want to test out without breaking other people's stuff. So maybe that's important in the real world as well. As I say that, I realize.
But it could be in the real world that you want to feed data different in space because they're different region, and maybe you have the device right in the middle.
So some options when you create your connection, your OMF connection. I'm actually creating, this says source here, but it's actually the client credential gets created for you, and you can pick which roles it needs in order to exist. Though this is all subject to change. This whole UI is in flux at the moment. So here's the secret, right? You can actually pick an expiration date for it. And then, so I can't get to the secret on this one because it was already created, but if I create a new one, I could. And then you could pick the destination. So it could also have this stuff going out to our, I believe, our next one, like production. So I could add a third one for our production if I wanted. And then this is what it looks like now, right? So you've kind of got a graphical view here of the data flow, which is nice. And then I don't actually want to save it, so I'm going to kill that.
But this is all new, right? The version here before it just landed the data. At least I can't remember this.
Yeah, so it
That's
used
right.
to be managed a different page. You had to create the client ID, the publisher, the topic, and the subscription. Make the thing, we just tidied it up together to be more like the Pi to
But also
OCS
these
experience.
features, the select where it would land.
Yep.
I got some streams and I was like, hooray, this is all new.
Yep.
Yes. Good? No.
Yep.
Okay, good.
We'll see. Yeah.
I don't want to assume.
Start using it, Lenny.
All right, so then at this point, you need to kind of figure out, well, what do I do with, how do I create these OMF messages? Everyone keeps talking about it. Lots of people are excited. I'm mostly confused and scared. What did it look like? This, maybe if I F11, I'll get a little more room. First off, I'm going to go to OMF 1.1. Mitchell, is that a good idea? Yeah. Okay.
That's your one lifeline.
Thank you. Yeah. And so there's a number of types of OMF messages. I largely don't understand type or container, but data, I get that. So we're going to go take a look at data, right? There's lots of helpful information here. The Explorer is my favorite thing.
Wait a second. I mean, the type is a type like for the stream type, and the container is just a stream. So you can create those type and stream from OMF before you send the data.
But then why is...
If I can get it, it's not that complicated.
So if I want to create some data for this, and I don't know what to put here, right? I don't know what the value should be shaped like. It's telling me it's valid OMF, but this doesn't really look valid, right? I can actually come in here and find my my fidgets stream that.
It's not in development, is it?
So sorry.
Yeah, both.
Oh, search. Oh, dynamic. This was awesome yesterday. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I can actually select this guy and say, well, I want to replace what's there with that. So now I know that this is how I'm going to write data to that particular data stream, and this is the shape of the data that it needs to be. It's telling me valid OMF. I doubt that this is a valid timestamp. Does it validate the actual data that's there? Would it validate timestamp? Yeah, I think so. But if I try to put some trash in here and I forget my colon, it will tell me this is invalid, which is nice. I can also pick a different one. So this fidget sensor has a different shape. This is a really nice way to actually like visualize it because sometimes the JSON is overwhelming, and this is sort of faux JSON. Not really, but it helps you understand, right? You've got a temperature that is not the key, and it is a single. Where is the key? Oh, here it is. You got Tim E. It doesn't work here anymore. And that's a date time, and that is the key, and then all the other stuff. Right, so if I wanted to insert some of this stuff, I could insert there. So you can send OMF messages with data for different streams, this one and this one. This one's just got 2 properties. This one's got 10. So it makes it really easy to author this stuff and gives you a good way to understand if maybe you screwed something up by forgetting a comma, which is super easy to do in JSON.
But it doesn't send anything to the archive, so it's just validation only.
So Chad, could I send multiple different messages for different types and things all in one thing, one payload?
Yeah, you can send multiple different messages for different. I got it right here. 2 different streams.
It's valid.
It's valid. It says it's valid.
You're valid.
You validate me. Or if you like flying by the seat of your pants, you can. I think you can. Right? Want it autocomplete? There's autocomplete in here. There we go. Here.
Prove it.
Yeah. So I can get my container ID equals some stream ID. And it's mad at me, probably because I'm missing a value, but no values. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't autocomplete this stuff. Oh, it does. And I think this actually works if I go in here and change my to dark mode, because that's what the cool kids like. Can I go to the OMF editor now? Oh. Right?
Midnight.
So much better.
I lost what I was working on, though, Mitch.
Control Z.
So that's OMF.
Yeah, I need to put your face again.
Yeah, my machine keeps locking because IT makes me do that.
Maybe I can answer.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go back to the slides now. Any questions on OMF? You probably should have questions on OMF. You're lying. You're not paying attention if you don't have questions on OMF.
So, real quick on OMF. I mean,
Yeah,
what's
you're
the-
supposed to be using a mic.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So what's the, I mean, is there kind of like a typical way that OMF's data is being transmitted now? I mean, what's the various scenarios, briefly, you know, that we're going to get OMF data into OCS? Because after we have the message, right, we're going to do something with that message. We're going to send it up to like a relay or whatever, and then it ends up.
Yeah, there's an OMF endpoint. Is there? There should be the URL in the connections page. Where is it? This is pi. I gotta switch to OMF.
Dig in.
If I dive into here.
There you go.
Oh yeah, so here's the OMF endpoint. The target URL for sending your OMF messages. So we actually go in here and copy this. Put it in your sticky note.
Right down there.
So you
There it
basically
is.
post to your namespace,
Okay.
and there's an OMF endpoint that you post it to, and you will get back an immediate 200 if it was received in OK. But the processing of that message happens asynchronously, right? So that's the point when you can check the logs over here and start looking for OMF errors about your OMF connection, saying it's having problems posting things. But that's, yeah, so the...
And you can show, we have an old page that we're going to retire with the new connection page, but essentially you can train by receiving how many messages, how many bytes, and how many made it to the archive. So that'll be part of the workflow from receiving the OMF messages, getting them to the SDS storage.
Because I was thinking about buffering or whatever, you know, like to make sure before you flush your data on the side that's transmitting, you know, knowing that it's like actually in the archive. If not, you need to buffer it and like try it again sometime, right?
You don't have to worry about that. If we got it, it's going to get there.
Yeah, you'll get 200. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only issues you would run into is if it's malformed.
Poorly
right?
formed, you wouldn't get that back as part of the payload. But you know, whatever OMF app it is, like I have a SmartThings kind of relay thing that I wrote. It has to authenticate, and then it has to post the OMF to that endpoint. And so it sits there and it like gets a bearer token and pushes the data there. But I don't know, unless I'm looking at the API console, whether or not the data actually made it. Because it just goes, yeah, I got it. But if I wrote bad OMF on the SmartThings side, it goes, well, I don't know what to do with that.
Anything else on OMF? Yeah, in the back?
OMF data gets written into the archive itself, or
Yes.
there could be other data sources that we could transpose it into.
Right now, the only target for your OMF messages that you push to OCS is the data stored in OCS.
I'm sorry, can you come again?
When you, do I have a slide open here? The only target for the data that is posted into your, the OMF messages that you send is the actual data store in OCS, is the streams in OCS. Yeah. Shipping it out beyond that is not part of the scope of this initial release.
But something like an Azure function or something like that can read, values from it and do other things. So you can use the REST API to go connect. Once it we want to be the system of record, so we want to land the data, make sure it's there, and then if you want to read out of it, you know, we're.
So something like an OCS would extract the data.
Yeah, you could use you could just be using the regular REST API to go and read the data out and put it somewhere else.
Which we're going to show you right now.
Right. Oh, API console. So this is not sexy, but it's super flexible and fun. And did we talk about this? Creating a stream, writing data to the stream. Am I really going to create a stream here? Got my API console. So this is our attempt to make it very easy for you to get started and playing with the API without having to figure out how to do authentication, authorization yourself, because you're already authenticated in this browser. So we can reuse that that context to work here, reuse your identity. We've also built in a lot of autocomplete so that it makes it easier to figure this stuff out. If all else goes wrong, there is links to APIs and some pre-built ones here, so you can actually, your monitors are probably bigger than my monitor here, but you can actually go like pull up what are the streams in my staging. And so it's these pre-built things, and then if you wanted to know what's the actual full path that I'm making, it's right here. You can do cool stuff like, well, what if I want to create a new stream, I want to post it. I probably need to give it an ID, right? So let's like demo with Chad. Spaces probably work. Anyway, we'll try a space. You know what we'll try? Windows dot? Yeah, Windows dot. That's the one you want. Thumbs up. All right. How do you get rid of this? There we go. Yeah. So I've got my, and then insert my stream template. So now this actually will create that JSON for you. Makes it pretty easy to do. You need to know what the type ID is, which off the top of my head, I don't want to lose this. Here, let's do this. You can see what an error looks like. So it gave me a bad request. It says it's not valid. You need to specify missing properties. Type ID was missing. So, so now I can jump over to and look at my we're in staging, right? So I go to my staging, streams, change this to types. Let's pick a good type to use. Get. So these are all the types. Is this the simple one? No. Yeah, that's the simple one, right? Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. We'll use this type. Yeah, I know, it's a nice idea. So I have a history here, so I can go back. Me and the API console, we have history. It's complicated. That's like a Gregg joke.
Yeah. Well done.
So I can go back to what I was working on earlier and put that type ID in there. So that's nice. And I can give this thing a name. No emojis here, please. Emoticons only. And then I can specify if I want to index this on any of those 10 properties. That's okay? All right.
It takes your OMF to the space namespace.
It's the food.
Oh, that's lunch. So I'm going to post this, and hopefully it works. Hopefully it doesn't do this.
Thinking about it. Shh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're about to find out if I
Oh, you emojied. That's
emojied it, yeah.
It should be fine. It should be fine. You'll see.
They hate when I do this. So now I'll go and get that stream. Yeah, so it was created. I feel like maybe my network dropped the response from that, but it came back. Here it is. And I can actually go back to the Storage Explorer, because possibly you don't trust me. And I can go in here and say, my name contains, was it Chad?
Yeah. No?
No?
It was ID.
Does anybody know if this thing is on? Oh, I'm on types. Oh, you're the best. So I can go and find my stream. What the heck?
Is it a name or is it ID? What was Chad?
Oh, it was ID. You're right. The name had a name contained emojis, right?
Emoji.
Yeah,
There it is.
there it is. Okay, I've got no data here,
Should
but I
add some.
can add some data.
Look at that.
So I need to put
Single.
a temperature in here, right? So I can say my temperature is that. That's not gonna. Oh, no.
That's not a number.
So we got a nice little toast that pops up here, and data was not written and the provided content cannot be processed because I didn't put a number in there. But if I wanted to bug tech support about it, I could copy this operation ID. So these are important for the DevOps folks to dig into it, and then I can send an email with that. Probably from Chuck's account. Let's see if I click email, what happens. Ooh, let's install Outlook.
Bienvenidos.
Fine. Anyway, so that's important to know. Often if you contact support, they will ask you for an operation ID, and even if it's obvious, like I forgot to put, I did use the wrong index, or I forgot to include a type, or if it's not obvious, something like something went wrong, you know.
Yeah, and if you do need support, we actually can't see inside your account.
Yeah.
So that's we're going to rely on you providing stuff like this because it's your data, it's your account, but we don't get to poke around in it.
That's a really good point. I never talk about that in public, but it's totally true. Clear all these, because I'm sure I'll create more. As a side note, if you go to like a page that doesn't exist, you get to see the fitness popcorn. That's Cloudy, and somebody made him. And I'm writing letters to get him unmade. I think feedback.osisoft.com is where that needs to happen.
It looks like you're trying to leave feedback.
Yeah, it's our Clippy, yeah. Anyway, I saw that the other day. That's great. I was adding an event, right? So if maybe it's it was cold in here, but it's warming up. So maybe it's 65 degrees. And this is the key for my particular type, so I can specify a time and save that. I think that if I put in a couple of them, because it's getting warmer as I'm rambling. Oh, did I?
That was an edit.
Oh, it was an edit. Was it?
Yeah.
Well, no. So that's get less value, right? So that's a single timestamp. But if I want to get
strange values.
Yeah, if I want to get a range of them, maybe go backwards in time from now. How about we go backwards in time from 2020? I only got the 2. Am I screwing up the 65? Did I throw that away? Is that what happened?
I think it was an edit.
Yeah,
I think you overwrote it.
Fine. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it was at the same time. Yeah. So
Yeah.
now I can actually see a trend happening. So this is kind of fun.
2 points. Yeah.
So I'm like the slowest Pi connector in the world, right? Yeah, and that was at 38 as well, right? Because the time is only to the minute. Anyway, so that's me querying for stream data.
Advanced.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit. There's an incredibly rich set of APIs for querying stream data. I didn't mean for that to sound sarcastic. If you end up in my streams and in we're back to this game, huh? If I do something that starts with pi. And I do /data.
You could persist those searches, you know.
They are.
And say a sticky note?
They're in my history, yeah. They're in sticky notes on this machine, which the mouse doesn't go that far.
I have software for that.
You know, there.
Yeah, but I do have my history on this. There's quite a bit of things you could specify in order to generate different kinds of searches for data. There's even filters where you can, and I showed this on stage earlier, search for events when different values are true or happen, beyond this value or within this range, that kind of stuff. There is an extensive set of documentation around how to make all those different kinds of calls, getting last data, getting Windows values, getting values, filtering data, range calls. There's a world of possibilities here that I can't imagine executing right now. But if we pull out, I'm kind of scared of what's in this one. Easiest thing to do is just look at everything. Let's see how much stuff's in here. Oh, I've got some stuff. So this has a value of, and it's kind of jumping up and down. That's cool. I can have a look at the JSON. I tend to show the trend because it just makes a little more sense, but you can see the actual JSON that would come back. And the point here is that for you to give you clues on how to build your own client application, because while we have plans to build OCS visualization stuff that's more user-focused, this is not it. You can also ask for it in a different format that is not this kind of JSON array full of values. You can get it back in a table H format.
Table.
Which now you've got this option of looking at it in a table, which is nice. And the JSON actually looks different because the columns are defined, and then all the values come back, all the different rows. Right, so it's flipped, I guess. So that is an option, and so that is an option that will show up in the query here. We have a checkbox for it because typing that might be not something that you're familiar with. So we're kind of trying to help you learn how to use the API with this tool.
So for long queries and that sort of thing, if you supply a continuation token, it does paging, that sort of stuff to help you out.
Yes.
That filter expression you can go kind of crazy on. You can look for things within the stream, so it's actually getting the result and finding the ones that you're actually interested in and just returning those. It uses OData language, right? Mostly? It's like EQ, GE.
Yes. Yeah, so it's things like what's on here. It's value, right? So I can look for when value is above 68 or something like that. Greater than or equal to 68. You do that query, you'll get back a different set of values.
So now you get different data back.
When you do that kind of query, I'm wondering about the indexing.
You're wondering about the indexing?
Do you want to index off of those values if there's a lot of them and you're concerned about performance or?
I don't know. That's a good question. It depends on the data, right? Like you are doing I guess a secondary index would help. Depends on the value that you're, like in the fitness band case where it's like timestamp and then you've got step count. You might want to say only return me days where I'm below a certain step count. That would probably help. If you're drilling, if you're doing a drilling operation, the time may not be as interesting as the depth or some other thing with the depth. So you might want to look for cases where something, it doesn't have to be indexed, but it would speed things up. But where the RPM was low and the friction was, or the rate of penetration was not fast, then you know you've got a condition that maybe that's triggering a maintenance event or something like that. So you can use the filter expressions to do interesting stuff like that.
Okay. UOM conversion. So we do have UOMs here, which, if we take a look at the documentation, there's quite a few UOMs available, units of measure. So there are quite literally thousands of them that you can use to decorate your streams. And I have, it's the fidget sensors. No, which ones have those? Unfortunately, the Pi to OCS ones we didn't create with UOMs, but the
meters.
The meters do. Okay, so if I go look at the types, thank you. Types. I get my tabs here. Find UOM. Right. So some of these have is it energy?
No, we don't have any meters. That's different.
Oh, it's a different cluster. Different browser. Let's try Firefox. Pi World 2019.
Yeah.
Maybe. What was it? Pi?
What's that?
There we go. So this is the cluster we stood up just for the ginormous demo. Is it OSIsoft?
Yeah.
We're doing this again. Hi, guys. You ever try to use someone else's keyboard? It's just off a little bit.
Dvorak layout, you're doing pretty well.
Thanks. Did I mention multi-factor authentication?
Have you done it?
Firefox update.
Yeah.
Oh man, we'll upgrade that.
Just in
We'll do-
general, like.
It's just more of a statement. You should see what it does when you open IE.
Yeah. He gets mad at me about IE.
You should uninstall this.
This is mad. We're going to do this again.
F disk.
Yeah.
Have you done anything on a secondary, like proper use case testing on a secondary index? Because if you do depth, you would need some sort of a
You need
table.
something else.
Yeah.
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 As long as an attribute, or
Yeah. So the interesting thing about the like depth data is that there may be even 3 components, because just because it's depth doesn't mean it's unique. So there's a time progression that you may not get from the sensor. So you don't go out and drill. You drill multiple holes, but you actually just drill the whole same, the same hole over and over again, because it just may be different days or different times or different operations. So if the drill bit is going up and down for some reason, you have to actually introduce a 3rd parameter or 2nd parameter to say like it's directional or something like that, and that you use a compound. Well, you can use a compound index for. I don't know. Not allowed to. All right. Architect says no, don't do that. But you should record the directionality somehow along with the data. So not every WITSML sort of thing gives you time. That's kind of up to the person making the device, which is interesting. So you have to find a way to mark those things. You shouldn't do that. Yeah. So yeah, you do. So depth is not necessarily unique, right?
No, but you could send it along with.
That's right.
At this datum, or
This date, this time, this operation,
You got unlimited. You got enough room to
Right.
write in.
So that's a data modeling question. What should the type look like, and what are the queries I'm going to execute against it in order to get the result out?
Primary key needs to be unique, secondary does not.
Secondary does not meet. Okay, good. So yeah, primary key is unique. Secondary is not.
Thanks. This is the kind of feedback we're looking for at this stage of development as well. So it's really helpful.
Yeah. We'll see what we do over the course of this release. The depth is really interesting. Right? I mean, it's one of the things you're doing a lot of time performance in drilling and offshore, but the depth, if you get it, it'd be nice to have them both in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is, there's a lot of software made for depth-based type of storage.
Right.
I got to see where this fits.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it's actually a different cluster. This is not the production. What we were playing with earlier was actually the production environment at cloud.osisoft.com that people with real problems use. This is a cluster we stood up just to prove that we could host 100 million streams. We have 96 million. Not sure why it stopped there, but that's what we have. So it's actually pretty impressive. Where are we going in here?
The types.
The types. Oh, wait, take a look at it.
UMs.
Yeah. Let me break my sticky note. So I did have. Yeah, so we do have UOMs on different types, and you can override those UOMs on your data calls in order to convert values that might be coming in. Pi, what was that even called? I'm doing this again because I can't remember the namespace.
No, yeah.
Try the dev one. I think that's where it was.
Yeah, no. That's the same.
You ever try someone else's keyboard and you can't copy and paste? Copy. Just pull something out of my sticky note. So this is kind of a fun way to find UOMs. If you're not familiar with someone else's data, this is like the nerd version of karaoke, of a PowerPoint karaoke. It's like, I'm going to search around for stuff to talk about. Yeah, so this is in volts, right? So I've got voltage A as a property. And so I can go and find stream data on the that has a tag type of commercial, right? So we're gonna jump around a little bit here in order to locate that. So I'm going to find some streams in that Pi world dev, and where the type. This thing's going to be a pain, isn't it? Oh, it moved on me. All right, we're just forget that. So, Pi world? No, voltage A. Pi world. I want to find streams. So I'll pull up 96 million streams here real quick. Just kidding. So this is the first page of 100. So I can find them. This is probably a fine example because I was looking for one that was of type commercial. So if I just go and look at this particular one and look at the data, and it's actually really easy just to get like what's the most recent piece of data that came from here. So this is what the data looks like that's in that. It's actually really kind of wide data because it's AMI, so a whole bunch of stuff's measured at a particular meter. So I've got the voltage here. I've also got the delivered energy. I think the delivered energy is more interesting because it's kind of a weird shape number. Maybe I don't want to trend this in this particular way. I can transform this by specifying what UOM I want it to be in case. So obviously this isn't the way that your users might use this, but this is very powerful if you are building a client application, right? So in here I need to specify a transform by hand, artisanally crafted.
Ooh, locally sourced.
STS.
Free range. Do you have free range?
Property ID, I believe, is what I want to put here, and then delivered energy. And so I want to change the UOM of this to not U0M. That would be that would be fun to figure out what the heck happened. What if I want to send that back in calories instead, right? And so then we're going to troubleshoot the. Oh, it worked.
No, it didn't.
It didn't. No, it didn't really work though. Did it? Let's see. STS property ID. So this is where you get into. I want to get into my help. Yeah, exactly. So here's my. So I can do transform. I have Ronan feeding me instructions.
He's your autocomplete. He autocompletes you.
So if I want to transfer my data, the easiest thing, I'm probably messing this up. STS type property, not STS property. That's what it is. So if I want to do a post on this. So now I'm posting this request. So now my delivered energy comes back the same. What the hell?
Is it UOMs?
Is it? We're going to try this a whole bunch of different ways. This worked yesterday. The other one we could try that worked yesterday was changing volt to millivolt. And actually, I was able to do both.
Not that.
Thanks.
Josie.
That should be 1,000 times larger than its friends. And it's not.
Oh, it's 2L, no?
I'm driving this wrong.
I think it's 2 L's. Millivolt.
Yeah, millivolt is 2 L's.
It's
What?
millivanilli.
Since when do we spell millivolt with 2 L's?
I think it was in an array of things, Chad.
Yeah.
It's an array.
Derek's right. Derek's right, and I really appreciate him speaking up, unlike you guys that were giving me wrong suggestions.
No, altogether it's going to work.
There we go. So that actually does it. Yeah. So because I can specify a bunch of different
all we
things.
said was valid.
Yeah.
You are still missing something.
It turns out I had a bunch of problems. Yeah.
So
So
it's just doing the conversion. It's not actually doing anything on the.
No,
It's not like
no.
It's not transforming the data. It's like a read
Yeah.
outbound transform. Yeah.
And the reason that it's an array, to Derek's point, is that I can convert multiple things at once, right? So because I prefer the calorie
It's an array of
part of the demo.
Not kilocalorie.
Yeah. So now I've got this is in calories, which looks a lot nicer than this. I don't know, kilojoules or joules. I think it was joules, right? Anyway,
Joules.
who knows what it was?
Watts. Probably watts.
Yes. So there's a full-featured UOM system there that allows conversion on the client side when you receive it. You can associate UOMs at the type level, override them at the stream level, and even override them when you're writing the data or reading the data back. So it's there's a ton of flexibility. It's like enough rope for you to do what you want with.
when can we add to UOMs?
We can now, it's not exposed. But
Okay.
Yeah. There.
Furlongs per fortnight. Is that what you're looking for?
People per minute.
Yes.
Reynolds number. We support Reynolds
Blockchain
numbers.
stuff that I'm doing.
Blockchain, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Add the
yes.
blockchain.
That'd be cool.
It's a distributed ledger of UOMs.
There's no lack of documentation around this stuff, that's for sure. And there's no lack of support if you want to email us or just come on in.
Well, mostly it's that's where I ran up against. I had a UOM that I needed.
Yep.
It wasn't in the defined ones, and I'm sure that'll happen. You can't. And then some of it was. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough on that.
There's a ton here. I'm not going to figure this out here. But there are access control lists around UOM, so that leads me to believe that I
There's
can
an ACL on
update
it.
them. Yeah, anyway, I'm curious about the functionality of that. Anyway, that's really cool. All actually cruising along here. We just have 20 minutes left in the session. It only feels like we have been here an hour and a half already. So we did that stuff. We did that stuff. Can you talk about Jupyter Notebooks?
Yeah, I can talk
I've
a little
never,
bit
okay,
about
thank
that.
you. I've
Yeah.
never seen it.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about this because this is where anyone use Jupyter Notebook out there a little bit. Yeah. So it's more to just talk about how we can, if we have the sample code that is up on you can get to it from the API console. But basically, if you can read it into Jupyter, which is one of these, there's an import sort of thing, and then all the familiar tools like pandas and pretty print and all those things. You basically can read those together, and then this is me reading a stream type. Stream properties, basically being able to print them out so I can see what they are, that sort of thing. So I created a little demo a while ago based on OCS. And if you go to the next slide, you can use some of these extra parameters to retrieve your data. So I created the creatively named get Windows values sorted, and that's me doing a call. I'm looking for when this thing was created, which is not its primary index, and just get the first 5 values back. And I'm only going to get from that those particular properties out of that array because there's a lot of data in that particular WITSML data type. And then I'm just printing it out down here. So you can see that some things will be not a number. That's fine. If you're a data scientist, you can decide to use pandas to go and fill that, do interpolations, extrapolations, that sort of stuff. So it's trying to return the data back to you in an easy-to-use format. So that's where that table H thing comes in, really handy, because it comes back with the rows and columns, and it's super easy to serialize into pandas at that point and use. R, same sort of thing. You can use any of the JSON conversions, and it's actually a lot faster to put that into a usable data frame using that table H parameter. So that was a really nice sort of thing to work with individual streams. Let's go to the next slide. And yeah, so then another thing that I was doing here, yeah. So let's go to the next one, I think. And you can then use things like Plotly. You just import that. You can tune it up in Jupyter, set all the parameters that you want, and you can do a vertical plot sort of thing. It's too bad the guy from Rollis walked away, but this is this would have been a super exciting moment for him. Yeah. So the only actually this is multiple drilling. So what you're actually looking at is multiple drilling profiles over the same well. So one day they drilled and they had a particular profile. The next day they drilled and there's 2 different dates and they don't record the timestamp at all. So I had to create a key that would actually be unique for the depth data. And then I've separated out, and go back one slide, by the 2 different drilling dates. So the drilling operations are actually in November and December, and I wanted to plot them over the top of each other. The key was depth, and that it gave me the start and end time of the actual operation. So it's a little bit like you might do an event frame sort of thing, but it's way more flexible. But WITSML, as he said, is not the best standard. It's just very complicated to do that. So go to the next slide and the one after that, I believe. Yeah, so then when I wanted to select that, what I actually had to do is say, I need the primary key, and I need the extra thing to filter out just the data that I want from that one date of the drilling operation. So that one was in November. This one's actually same thing, so I just wanted to retrieve this range and use it to plot it. Interpolating, all those things become standard then, because when I make that pandas data frame, I can drop in A, I could drop out all the nada numbers, and you can pick which key you want to do that, which column you want to do that, and then just drop all those. Or you could fill them in through interpolation or whatever you want to do. So it's super easy to work with in terms of Jupyter Notebook. You can make your little snippets and kind of refer to them. It goes out and interactively pulls the data back. It becomes very handy to work with. So that's just what I wanted to show on that.
Okay. Any questions from the data scientists in the group? Data scientists. I'm not one of those.
I'm not one of those either.
You
I play it on
pretend to be,
TV.
Yeah, he just, on the weekends, he pretends to be. It's sad. All right, so I did want to talk about metadata a little bit. This is, I think, maybe the last little demo cluster we've got, demo clump we've got. So we have some metadata. So this is not AF. This is not a full-featured hierarchy of things that you glue together. This is not event frames. This is not templating, but this is decorating your streams with information that's valuable to you and allowing you to search for those streams later based on that, group them by that, things like that. Because I'm having so much luck messing around with this stuff, let's go in here and decorate one of these AMI things. So I can have a look at this stream and its metadata. Let's see if it's got any. Do I get? I'm probably going to get a, I don't like this cluster. Can I switch to this one? Yeah.
A pro tip on that API console, be sure it doesn't say delete
Yeah.
before you press the button.
It's important.
Derek knows.
I lost my sign-in.
Mailbox that comes up. Do you really want to delete?
I think
Yeah.
we added, that's the Derek feature. I think we did add the, are you sure you want to go
Yeah.
do that?
Seriously?
Seriously, don't do that. And again, that's why you have roles. So if there's someone who's a contributor of data, they shouldn't be able to delete the data. You know, that's another
Good
reason.
point too. What happens if there is an accidental deletion? Is there any way
It's unfortunate.
that it's over? Do you have a backup somewhere?
Yeah. So I mean, that's one thing you have to do is make sure you know how to use the Sharp tool. Wow, that's interesting.
What's that? Oh, this thing?
Yeah.
Oh, that was me testing. I logged into a different account completely. Sorry. Yeah, this is just me testing.
Blanc doesn't work?
Giving myself a name and see if it actually executes. Sorry, it didn't work. And Blanc doesn't work. But some stuff does. Like if I go to my profile, I think, oh, it stripped all that stuff out. Yeah, it doesn't blink. Anyway, we're going to go in the API console and look at streams. Derek, you got any streams I can look at here?
There might be some.
All right, cool. So we're gonna, if not, we'll create. So I can get my, I've got a wave data sample one here. So I'll look at this stream and you can kind of see there's basic information about it. He's got some property overrides here. So the UOM is, he's cleared out the URM for the radians to null for some reason, changed the interpolation mode. But if I want to decorate this with some context, I can throw metadata on here. And get, let's see if Derek's got any. Oh, you got some. Oh, no, I got some. I did this yesterday, I guess. Anyway, so it's like, I used to work there. Okay. So if I want to do a put, I can actually edit this. So I can copy this so I don't throw that stuff away. Maybe I want to change some of this. So this is just a key value pair that makes it easy. So you put the key for whatever it is, and the value goes here, right? And then I can put it. It's not particularly useful, but there it is, right? There's also something called tags. So tags is just a.
You want to get that?
Thanks. Go back to get. So let's take a look. There's probably a tag on here. No, there's nothing. That's weird. So we can put some tags. So tags are just, instead of being a key value pair, it's just like a value array. So I can put things in here like, well, this is an environmental stream. And maybe this stream is out of service. Maybe that's interesting. I can put that in there. So that's stored along with those streams. And then I can later on come in and search. So I can come back here to Derek's streams. And search isn't super interesting because he has two. Derek. But in here I can say, you know, my plant is starts with 9. Find me that stream. And it should just find the one. Yeah, so it's just the one. Or if I could do 9 as well like this, and nothing. Yeah, so it doesn't actually work that way. But and I can also do, you know, I'm going to search for tags for everything that's out of service, outstar. Right? And there it is. I'm kind of curious how out of service would work. Probably not.
Yeah, let's do it live.
Do or tags service. I bet that would work because I think it's tokenized. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so there's some rich searching stuff. And also everything that's, we also search name and description kind of the same way, but in a more free-form way. So there's some really powerful searching capabilities here that when streams are decorated like this, it makes it really nice to find things. I'm going to, sorry for jumping around like this, but I want to jump back to the PyOCS stuff from the that we looked at earlier, because I want to look at the metadata that's created automatically by PyOCS. So we get to see Duo again.
So one of the things that difference between tags and metadata, so tags are kind of like category things that you put there. They're a single descriptor, hashtags, kind of like you do there. So if you're a Flickr user, you use iTunes for some reason, Spotify, that sort of thing. The key value pairs are things that you might maintain more centrally. So it might be like artist, Milli Vanilli,
Yep, good
that
choice.
kind of thing. Or then the hashtag might be dance music. So you can, well, no, pop, 80s, yeah, something like that. So anyway, you can use those differently to group and organize things, and that will be a feature that we're going to leverage quite a bit in the data science views. So creating views based on groups of streams and values and that sort of thing. We want to let you decorate those streams with key value pairs and that sort of thing. So use for organization later.
So I can search through, I know I have some Pi to OCS tag streams in this particular namespace, so I can search for any of them that have type ID of float64, right? So these are my, like this VAV signal call is a float64 and blah, 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 right? So I know these are cool in the gang. If I pick one of these, the IDs aren't particularly meaningful. That's why I have to query for them, but that's why we have query, I suppose. If I get rid of the query and I just want to specify that one stream, I go in there. That's it. So let me take a look at the metadata. So this metadata, I didn't create this by hand. I never typed into this. I've never seen this stream before in my life. But the agent itself will grab this information out of Pi and shove it into OCS along with the stream's definition. So then you can go and look for these streams by this stuff. So you can do a query by analytic. If we go back to our query, I can find all of the ones from analytic, right? Just by point source. Analytic. And stars work. I just didn't want to stop typing halfway through that word. And so I've got a whole list of all the ones that have that point source, which is pretty cool. You also have some ones like point ID. Anyone have a favorite point ID? One. So I can search for point ID 1. I should have, and I've got two. I've got two sinusoids. Two sinusoids, right? So one of them is from PHL, which is Philly, and one of them is from Oakland, which is San Leandro, oddly enough. And then this should be sinusoid 2, right? Sinusoid U? Yeah, that's it, yeah. Anyway.
So that basically, even if you had the exact same naming convention, the exact same everything at every single Pi server that you want to put in a single namespace, you could still find and tell them apart. So that you're not going to necessarily cause any real issues there. We do take something over from as many of the point fields, the metadata fields like EndUnit is sent up there. It isn't automatically overridden into a UOM though. That's something that depends what users put in as abbreviations and that sort of thing. EndUnit isn't really a canonical reference on a Pi point, but you could imagine that if EndUnits was all degree Fahrenheit or something standard, you could go then create units of measure and that sort of thing you could write a script that would basically say, oh, it's this, make sure the UOM is actually reflected as Fahrenheit as an override on the type, or on the stream there, on that value. So we tried to bring up as much as makes sense from the Pi system there to help you out.
Yeah, with that said, always looking for feedback on the way this stuff works. And we do have plans to build out some more automated systems to populate this metadata on your streams based on rules that you can define, things like that. So.
And you can add to this, right? You can go and just add more metadata into these things that come from Pi to OCS. Yeah. This is just the default set that comes.
Okay, so we only have maybe 5 or 6 minutes left. I did want to point you to, I didn't get to do this morning because I'm an idiot, but we do have code samples. So, and these are available even if you're not logged in, which I think we said maybe an hour ago. But for Python.NET, Java, Node.js, this stuff is in GitHub. We accept pull requests, so we like your feedback.
No. Who does? You do? I don't think we do that.
Yeah. So and we try to be really consistent around so the URL and the tenant ID and authority, that stuff. So in those samples is not provided. You would need to provide that, but once you log in and add those variables, that stuff those should just work. I can point you to my friend Derek. He's up to his elbows in these currently. That's where all our samples are. And then, of course, we've been in this multiple times today, but the documentation, there's a link there as well. It's easy to get to. There were a few more slides that I don't know that we have time to get to, but we did that. We did that. Oh, yeah, and NuGet.org. So we do have a client library, and we don't have time to get into that, but you can do NuGet.org, and you can search it for OSIsoft, which is, there should just be, no. I think it's profiles. So if you just go to nougat.org, search OSIsoft OCS clients. So this is our NuGet package. It's a .NET client library for accessing OCS. If you don't like messing around with HTTP messages like raw, like I have been doing for the last 90 minutes, you can always do this, and it's a much friendlier way to interact with it. And if you're familiar with C#, and there's the API documentation has tons of examples of how to use this in that sense. So, and we just went 2.0 a week ago. Back to the slides and the console app. Yeah, no time to do a console app. And Greg, you talked about this, so I don't know if we need to go into this.
Scales to 11.
No, we didn't talk about. Go back. Yeah.
Sorry.
There you go. Laurent, you want to talk about it?
No, you can talk about it.
I don't know much about it.
You asked for it.
Oh, I did? All right. Yeah, I didn't say I knew how the sausage was made. I just asked for a delicious meal. Yeah, so we spun up this big, huge cluster just to show that one namespace can handle almost any amount of just depending. It's our job to scale up the cluster for the needs of the user. So we expect people to connect to Pi@OCS, and that 2 billion equivalent Pi tags, now you see why it's saying equivalent, because the structure of the streams for those meters, we're sending over 20 properties with every single measurement. And so, in AF, you would have 20 different streams. You'd group them together in a AF template, that sort of thing. And it's kind of a similar level of grouping. But we actually spun up, it's a very, very big system, 11 terabytes of RAM. And it's all stuff that the user doesn't have to worry about. We're taking care of the scale. We're operating this for you, and then, like Chad showed you, you can interact with us by sending support emails or operation IDs or things like that. So you also saw Chad using this system, so it was just as performant as the other one. He was going in, looking for streams, doing stuff to it, and there was really no perceptual difference to the actual user. There's network lag or whatever in the hotel, but we're able to do this stuff at scale and make it usable. So that's all we wanted to say about this thing. Is it's real.
We have 2 minutes and 16 seconds for questions. I really appreciate the interaction throughout this. It's a long session, and a lot of us are tired from multiple days of talking about things and working on things at night. So, working on things at night.
Everyone knows how to spell OMF and OCS.
Yeah, and for OMF, if you want to learn more, Transparent is going to go at 2:30, show how they have small devices and sending data to OCS. So that will go through that in more detail.
That's in this developers track, or is it?
No, that's in the product track.
Yeah, it's up over in the other hotel.
Okay.
So we have a certain quantity of application partners that are actually building stuff against OCS. So if you were a Pi customer, you could do Pi@OCS. You could ask them to hook up their application. You grant them access. You've seen all the access control stuff, and you can do it through client ID or whatever it is that they need to make their app work. And we have things to help them access the data there. Basically, you can create streams, types, whatever. Because the Pi@OCS stuff has a consistent type, they can build an application that kind of looks like one version of that application and expect it to work properly.
How can you change types?
Oh, Lonnie wants to know how to change types.
Yeah, so it is possible to change a type after you create it. That's a good point. I know there's a way, Lonnie. Actually, I'm kind of curious. We can get a...
It's great. Just kidding.
Is it update type?
Is it put?
String? That would be a put. I'm going to find that out for you, Lonnie. And you know what we're going to do? I'm going to write a blog post about it right here on the portal. It'll be down here in the service blog. Watch this space. And it's going to be targeted at Lonnie on how to update types once you decide to change the shape of your data without losing your data.
That would be very nice. Thank you.
I'm guessing it's probably adding properties. I'm guessing changing
Yeah,
them
I think
probably won't work.
Adding would be nice.
You can change the name of them too.
You can change the name.
Yeah. You can do a couple of things with like the stream views, and then you switch it based upon the input with the stream view. It's in the samples.
Ooh, it's in the
There's
samples.
samples, yes.
Ooh, wow.
I can't believe you didn't look in GitHub, Lonnie. Okay, the red light's blinking, so we're out of time. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great rest of your day. See you at lunch.
But also just lunch.
Okay.